Hello, welcome to another MarketMuse content strategy webinar. And today's discussion is going to be about Clubhouse. Have you heard of Clubhouse? I think everybody's heard of Clubhouse. It's Clubhouse and disappearing audio content. And it's about, is this part of your content strategy's future? And before I get into introducing our amazing guest today, who is really positioned as the expert in Clubhouse, I want to just have some housekeeping. If you have any questions for us, please ask them in the Q&A. It's usually on the right side of your screen, and we'll either get to them in line if they're directly relevant, or we'll catch all of them at the end in the Q&A. We've also have a Clubhouse at 5 o'clock. We're having an after party. We're going to discuss this. I'll put up a link. We'll give you the details of that. Get into more details if you actually want to chat about the things we talk about today. The recording will be sent out in the next couple days. While you're at it, we have over 50 content strategy webinars from amazing people like Kevin Indig, Andy Crestodina, Pam Didner on sales enablement. Just a huge collection of experts in their respective fields, all available for free. If you go view a couple of those content strategy webinars, and you like what you see, give me a shout at jeff@marketmuse.com and leave me any feedback. Ask me any questions. I'll even set up a content strategy audit and review for you. All right, that's the housekeeping section. I'm going to introduce someone. She's the president of RubyMediaGroup, and she has recently been quite active on Clubhouse, and I'm so happy to be able to ask her to join us today and share her experience and what she's learned, but also just how to associate, best practices, public relations, best practices, social media management to a Clubhouse experience. Kris Ruby, thanks for joining us.
Jeff, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you today to talk all things Clubhouse.
For sure. So tell us a little story about so far, your life so far that's included Clubhouse, what you've seen, what are the types of things that you've personally experienced, and anything that before we get started with our conversation that you want to kind of set as kind of setting the bar for Clubhouse and how you're thinking about it right now.
So I think Clubhouse is really interesting in the social media industry. When other apps have come along, I didn't jump on them the same way. So when we looked at Snapchat, didn't get as excited about it. TikTok also wasn't as excited about it. But then Clubhouse came along, and I have to say I'm a little excited about it because I think that this is an opportunity for people to win who may otherwise have not been able to win on those platforms. I believe that Clubhouse certainly rewards intellect. It rewards someone truly being a subject matter expert, because if you're not, you'll quickly get kicked off the stage, or other people can tell. You just won't be able to sustain a conversation or to be able to answer the rapid fire questions you'll get in real time if you're a speaker on the stage. So you can quickly see the holes in someone's argument that you can't see on another platform, which really rewards how you look, for example, Instagram, versus what you have to say. So that's why I'm very excited about Clubhouse from a subject matter expert standpoint.
No, I think that's an amazing concept of it's about what you say. It's audio. It's about what you say, not so much how you look. And that's something that is really interesting. And so when you're thinking about how this, applies to, should I be managing my social media platform? Should I be managing my Clubhouse platform in the same way that I'm managing my, my social media platform, my LinkedIn profile? Is this something that has that kind of weight? Like let's just say, I looked at the recent stats. I believe they've picked up 4 million users in 2 weeks. Like, it's becoming very relevant. So should I be thinking about, doing something a little bit more with my profile? Is that even on your radar as you're diving in here?
Of course. Well, one, even if you're not interested in doing anything at all on Clubhouse, you should still absolutely get your handle for your name and take it before someone else does. You should also get the .club domain for your name before someone else takes that. Those seem to be very popular right now. Again, just hold it in case, to make sure no one else takes that. But yes, absolutely, from a marketing perspective, I think that this is worth checking out. I said to someone else the other day, from a PR agency perspective, if you're not on Clubhouse right now, there's no way you can be properly servicing your clients and giving them the best possible counsel. I believe that this is the biggest thing to disrupt the PR industry in a while. So I think that this is going to breed a new version of media personalities And it's interesting because people seem to do well on this platform that may never have been on the conference circuit or the stage to begin with, but introverted type people are really attracted to this platform who may never have wanted to speak in front of 5,000 people to keynote at a conference before the pandemic, but now on Clubhouse they can do it from their room.
Yeah, so you did disruption in public relations. Well, what are the types of things that you think are most disruptive about Clubhouse for PR?
So the authority building and brand building expertise that you can sort of put your clients' expertise up on stage with the other social media influencers that otherwise would be very difficult to, for example, get them booked with. If you wanted to do an event with them, you'd be going back and forth from a PR perspective, like at least 20 emails deep, trying to coordinate this whole thing with all these speakers. They may or may not answer. I mean, you know how it is, Jeff, and it may never have happened. So
I think it's creating I'm excited about it. One reason what you said, but I view these events effectively like a massive volume of micro events, and the feeling you get when a Clubhouse is happening is very similar. If you're not on it, right? It's very similar to an event that's happening in Portland, Oregon this year, and I wasn't able to go. Oh gosh, I'm missing out. I got that fear of missing out when there's people at these events whose information I value, or whose intellect or whose insights may be interesting to me, and I've already felt it. I think Kris, this is kind of funny, but there was an event this weekend, and someone tweeted at me and said, "Hey, can you jump in here? It's Saturday." I said, "Actually, it's my parents. My parents their birthdays are 1 week apart," and I said, "I really want to jump in there, but it's their birthday. I can't jump in there." So this fear of missing out is actually already happening, and I think it's only going to get more exciting. So how do you think about that for if you were creating a collection of a massive volume of these micro events? How do you even manage that? How do you manage a schedule? When it can be so intrusive, it's so much time. And is it worth the time? How do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think it is worth the time that you're putting in, but I think you bring up a valid point that it's not going to be sort of a direct marketing activity. Now, for some people it is, and you hear people talking about closing leads and deals all day long from Clubhouse. I think, at least in my industry, I think it's more long lead and relationship building. So that's how I see it, and warming up that cycle and building relationships. I don't know that I see it as much as the micro events as I see it as an extension of your brand in different areas that you may otherwise not be in or have those conversations in, simply because it takes too much time on the front end or the back end to do that production work. It's interesting. I was talking to someone about the podcasting industry versus Clubhouse in general, and they said podcasts are fake. They're recorded. You know what someone's going to ask you. Although I don't always know that. Maybe you do, but I don't. So people are looking at this as like, no, this is now the real media, which I think is fascinating, because they think if you want to catch someone on their toes or keep someone on their toes, put them on Clubhouse. Forget a podcast. You really want to know if they know what they say they know, put them on the spot. So I find that interesting.
It really makes, as you said that, and I think it ties to, it really makes the value of empathy and the value of improvisation, and it can put you to the test. I mean, it can really put someone to the test if they truly don't have those skills or haven't crafted those skills. They may just be a fly on the wall. I mean,
exactly.
So how do you think about that from the standpoint of coaching somebody of what they should be thinking about to be effective on the platform?
So if you're not media trained, you shouldn't be on Clubhouse. I want to say that again.
There's the tweet right there.
Media training should be required for anyone before they go on Clubhouse, because what happens is you feel like you're in this intimate conversation, and you forget that even though it's against their TOS to record the calls, of course people can record the calls. And this is where people, I did a room Saturday night on cancel culture. It was a 6-hour-long room. Now, it's very possible that was from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. There goes Saturday night. But it's very easy to lose track of the fact that you are on stage. So when you do a national TV segment, you realize, right, the entire time, I'm on TV. This is not a private call. And so what happens is there's a disconnect on Clubhouse that people are forgetting that it's just like being on TV, even though it feels private and intimate, you still need to remember that you have an audience. And I also think what's sort of interesting is that when these rooms get super large, you start to lose track of who that audience is, because you're focused on moderating a room or being a speaker. So if you then lose focus of that and start clicking on everyone's face in that room, that's going to be really distracting, and it's going to make for a lower quality conversation.
Yeah, I think it really connects to, I agree completely that you're representing both yourself, and if you have one-to-many brands, you're also, putting yourself out there from the standpoint of, it's very similar to attending a live event or a virtual event that has a kind of an unplanned segment. That's something that does not have a track. You're not part of the track. It's a social segment when you're there. And it begs the question of, how do you perceive the privacy dynamic? You mentioned that you're not allowed to, on all clubhouses by their policy, to record, but who's to say who's recording, what their goal is with recording, that they're not just, I have a very significant recording rig. If I had the desire to, I could record that day. I could record that audio and have it for whatever reason. There's privacy dynamics, but there's also, a targeting dynamic if somebody really, had that type of motive, right?
Yeah, so I also just want to say one thing, that so you're technically not allowed to. However, they do say that you can record it if you put recording in the title, and then you get written authorization and consent from the other speakers on the stage. Now that makes sense in a very closed environment if you're not having people come up for Q&A. But I don't see how you can possibly manage consent of all random people that you're adding on your stage unless you know all of those people, right? So that's the disconnect, or the question I have about that.
And that may just be the maturity of the platform, right? The maturity of the product. I mean, it's pretty novel, and there's a lot of challenges of this platform that, the shortcomings, right? It's only on one device type. It's, that is that going to change? Is recording going to be a premium feature for brands? Are you going to have to associate yourself with brand entities at some point? There's a lot of things that it doesn't do because it is so extraordinarily lightweight and casual. So will the commercialization of Clubhouse bring us things that we kind of like, could jeopardize its cool factor, right?
I'm so curious to see what happens, at least with the influencer marketing here. Are we going to start to see sponsored rooms and branded rooms? So for example, if there is a conversation around, if there's a dog club or a pet club, and you have a big brand, right? I don't know, Chewy. Maybe they decide that they want to sponsor that room. And what does that look like? So these conversations are already happening. Their target audience is literally leading it for them. Is that brand going to connect with the moderator or admin of that club and say, let's collaborate? I see that as the future of this. And it's so new, as you mentioned, that I haven't seen it yet, but I think that's the direction it will go in for sure.
Cool. I think the Chewy team's all hopefully listening and very excited about their name drop.
I have no affiliation with Chewy. It was just
no, but I'll just leave that there. But they're awesome, awesome people. SEO team's amazing. You can look them up. But so that's really a smart thing to think about. How's this going to evolve? And I want to get to a couple ways that we can do that. So the one thing I would say is, we have some people thinking about, with the direction it's headed, but it also its technological shortcomings. How fearful should someone be that they're being recorded? Is that something that, or should you just always have the policy that everything I say is going to be reported? I've been on some rooms so far where I feel like if it was recorded, some of the people in that room would be frightened out of their wits. Are you seeing that same thing happen?
Yes. So I'm seeing two different dynamics there. So as soon as it says recording in the title, the conversation is totally different. It's a little more stiff. People, it just sounds like a podcast again, and people are, as you said, much more afraid to say what they really think because they're monitoring. They're monitoring that for sure.
Gotcha. Cool. So yeah, I want to get into a little bit more about kind of where we see it headed. But I also, do you feel like they're likely going to be doing things like maybe tracking and recording it on their own? so that they can have audio search, or that like doing their own transcription so that they can create an archive of all of their rooms? Like, is that their obligation that they're going to do, or do you even see them even thinking about that?
I certainly see it as an obligation. Not only audio search is a great point that you bring up, but I see it as their obligation for the deaf and hard of hearing population, because they have said that this is an inclusive platform that was not inclusive for a large percentage of the population. This was a huge issue on Twitter, and it was discussed in our room on Saturday. It looks like maybe they're making some changes in that direction. But yes, I mean, we saw the podcasting industry got slammed for that as well, right? And that's why every podcaster had to go on and start adding transcriptions so that it was more accessible for people. And I think
that was where I was headed with that. I thought that, perfectly. I mean, it's kind of like for the first part of it, it was jokingly inaccessible for people who have Androids, right? Or for non-Apple, but it's not a joke, right? When something exists only in audio, that's a serious accessibility problem. And I think that I'm glad that that's being discussed. And just changing the topic too, for would this even be accessible for somebody who is hard of hearing or deaf? Could they even actively use the application to be a moderator, right? And that's another question.
That is so I think they have to address all of that. I don't think could they be? I don't think so.
I think it'd be very, very challenging. Given the skills that one needs, I think, to be very effective as a moderator with Clubhouse. And from your standpoint, what do you think are the skills one should focus on if they're thinking about moderating or they're moderating? What is like kind of your meets minimum? And then obviously you said media training, but what other things should you be thinking about?
I'm so glad you brought this up. So the skills to be an effective moderator on Clubhouse. One, I think you have to be really good at reading the room. You need to understand the dynamic of the room, the tone of the room. I mean, obviously you can't tell body language. You can see people flashing their mics in there, but you need to, if there are long, awkward pauses between speakers. I mean, you really need to sort of like read between the lines of what's going on in your room. And I also think if you are a moderator, you have this tremendous amount of responsibility that's placed on you. It's not as fun as just having this green badge and saying, I'm going to lead this room. You become responsible for anything and everything that goes on in that room. If anyone reports it, it's technically your room that's getting reported. And so I think you have to inherently be a strong leader. And I've said before, not everyone is a leader. So what we have right now is a lot of people leading that actually may not know how to lead. So I'd love to see some more leadership training around being a moderator. I think anyone and everyone needs that. I think public speakers, for example, they build up that skill over time. They don't just wake up and say, I'm a great public speaker. I think the same is true about being a strong Clubhouse moderator. You have to work at it every day. And I'd love to know your thoughts on that as well, Jeff.
I think there's no barrier to entry. So It's a lot different than, getting your first speaking gigs and, being super nervous that first, the first few events you do, and then kind of getting your groove, and then, frankly, getting to the point where you don't even have to practice, right? I think that the learning curve is still extraordinarily high. However, there's no barrier to entry here. So what I feel is if people are kind of going through that right now, they're like, whoa, I'm on center stage. I have never done this before. Should I be preparing this? Am I good at this? How can anyone know the answer to this? And I think what you're seeing is, and I've actually talked about this as a bit of a paradox, in that the people who have no clear empathy, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. They're not empathetic in their communications. They aren't trained in consultative selling. They're not good listeners. Well, a lot of rooms, they're seemingly ruling the stage.
Why do you think that is? Tell me, let's go there. Why is that? I find this fascinating.
I just think it's air. You're talking into air, and if you've ever been in a room, and let's say Clubhouse, right? If you've ever been in a Clubhouse and there's just someone there who, doesn't care about what anybody else is saying, that's what's happening in a lot of these situations. And I think that that's the role of a great moderator too. It's to say, how do I address the situation where, a person is kind of sucking the wind out of this room. And that's like, I guess that's kind of like what we have to do as moderators of these rooms, is because, yeah, I'm seeing this happen a lot in some of the larger rooms, or ones where there's a secondary motive, the motive of, maybe, I know there's a lot of MLM going on in Clubhouse, so I'll just leave that out there. But yeah, there's definitely been a lot of situations where it's very monopolized. Somebody could monopolize that time if it wasn't modified or moderated well. So.
You're right with the MLM stuff. And also I've heard about Clubhouse scams where they like tag team, they go into people and then they'll share stories with each other. So two people go into each room and then they'll say, oh, Jeff, don't you remember when when we worked on this? And they bring it up and they go back and forth off each other. And then they bring that person into their funnel, except the other person has no idea what's going on, or that all of this was pre-planned before they did the room. So you have to watch out for that stuff too, which is a little bit scary. And so a lot of people who have Cash App or like, here's how to pay me in my profile, like maybe you should think about that.
Well, I think it's, I want to kind of tie this to search engine optimization and content strategy, but, this isn't something new either in the search engine optimization space, in the affiliate marketing space. I mean, there are triangulation schemes that exist throughout the web on people who I'm not actually promoting something directly, but I'm promoting someone else or their network who is supported by ad revenue or supported by affiliate revenue. I think what I'm already starting to see in some of these communications is, yeah, unfortunately, I may not be directly pitching something, but I am adjacently doing it, or adjacently doing it. And that flywheel, it's just to be aware of that, I think is key, much like when you're watching, a YouTube video of someone promoting someone else or making a list of other people. And it just happens to be that, 7 out of the 9 people in their list are all happen to be affiliates of some product, and there's a lot, you got to check the net.
It's amazing, right? Because normally when you think about affiliate marketers, you think about so many different things in terms of like, oh, it has to say there's all these regulations about how things should be. Not to say that they're always followed, as you bring up, but I think about more text-based things. I think about them writing comments and threads, and now this is a whole new direction where they're out there talking. Yeah. And it's brand dropping, right? Brand dropping in audio. Exactly. Is that the future of affiliate marketing?
That's why I always just like to make it really clear. Yeah, I want you to buy MarketMuse, but I actually do care about you and your site. But yeah, I want you to buy MarketMuse. But that's a funny one. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is how is this a big thing for SEOs? I think when we were talking about it, you were like, man, it's not very clear to me that it even is. And how do you feel about that now? I know we've had a couple conversations about it, and I'd love to get into a few things that relate.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So, well, first update me with some new developments that you saw. I know you did some research in this area. So what's going on with Google and indexing?
So they are starting to index event pages. But these event pages are thin. I mean, they are thin content. And so these pages are acting like thin content pages, but this site has such a massive velocity of excitement and authority, and there's a lot of people linking to these things that these pages are going to appear. They're going to appear for, exact match on the actual events themselves. They're going to appear for probably some really complex queries that involve the people who are named and associated with the event, and some substrings of those queries. It's just naturally going to happen that way. And so one thing I'm imagining is that Clubhouse is going to need to consult with a technical SEO person, and they're going to build an infrastructure or archive of these events. I mean, it's just a natural progression as they mature. And that's something that they're probably maybe even not considering, but they should, right? And what I also see as potentially in the future is that just like rich media optimization, let's say you had an event that was, I'm trying to think of this time of year and what events I should be going to, but if it weren't for the pandemic, let's just say we're going to Content Tech in San Diego, right? The people that go to those shows and really take repurposing and event marketing and relationship building seriously, they have pre-interviews with people that will be at the event. They do session session reviews. They talk about the event. They build content. They take snippets. They tweet, and by adding value, but also by profiling, which sessions were great, how to really be a pro at this particular event. I think that there's an avenue, and I'm already starting to see it, for people to act as repurposing experts of the sessions and the clubs that they're attending. So it's not just creating those event pages, it's I'm using the audio just like I'm using the content of an event or a speaker session or a workshop to make my own presence, right?
So actually, you just made me think about how does EAT, right? I think EAT probably directly does apply to this with Clubhouse. When we're talking about building up expertise, authority, and trust, this is a great way to do that. And I think one way you can do that is by taking screenshots of you adjacent to other influencers on the stage. So does that have a direct SEO value? I don't know, but it certainly could help build your authority. So that would be my answer to it. The more I think of it,
you're with authority, which is a little bit, it's all about the transition of this audio to other forms to become valuable, right? So it has no natural transcription, right? It isn't being archived in search. So it's somebody taking the audio and turning it into other media. And so when you basically take a screenshot of the phone, you're turning an audio session into a image. If you are then writing about that session and you're writing a synopsis or a summary, it's just like writing a untranscribed podcast show note effectively. So it's about that repurposing and transitioning, and the people who are really good at that, I think there's a great opportunity to start to run with that and be very good at rich media optimization here. And I'm already starting to see it. People talking about what they heard on Clubhouse, but that isn't a natural thing. It's not just going to happen naturally. It's someone that has to actively consider the value and know the value of repurposing. And there are some really good people out there already doing it.
So Jeff, do you think, is there inherent value to you, in your opinion, of doing this if you're not recording and you're not repurposing and you're just having disappearing conversations, going back to, your content strategies future?
I think you have to know the types of outcomes that make it valuable. So relationship building, absolutely. You're really making sure that if you are truly a genuine human and you actually care about others, this is a great application for you because it comes through. I mean, it really comes through who cares and who doesn't in these conversations. And I think that that's really special. I mean, it's why, the first PubCon I ever went to, or maybe the second one, I'm just thinking like the first time I went to a PubCon and, stayed up all night talking to Roger Monti and Lawrence Coburn and these guys in 2003, and I'm like, whoa, that conversation existed and no one ever will know that conversation. And that's really special. And there is a special, real, genuine value to these things that you couldn't have possibly had. And that I think that there is value there. And I think that there's other kinds of value, like, whoa, how hard would it have been to get all of us in a room today, right? It just as kind of improvisation. One person might have been left out, right? If we had tried to orchestrate it or done it as an organized Zoom call. It's like, this medium creates situations that couldn't happen anywhere else. And it also gives you, it makes it so that the genuine people are really come through,
Yes, yeah, I agree. Yes and no, but to your other point, we also have a lot of genuine people or not genuine people, right, that are dominating the platform. So that's the unfortunate reality here. And so my advice for those people, if you feel that way, I mean, I certainly feel that way in those larger rooms. I just try not to go into them because I don't find them satisfying in any way. I prefer smaller, intimate conversations with usually less than 20 people where I feel like everyone can talk and everyone has a voice and is heard. And I'd rather have a group of 20 curated people than 1,500 people listening. And some people will say, oh, I thought there'd be more people in this room. And to those people, I would say, this is not like an ego-based activity to see how many people you can get in an audience or how many followers you could get. That's, at least that's not my use case of it. What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I think it's I didn't really get it at first. I'm just blunt. I didn't know. I didn't know if it was going to have value. And what I've been trying to do is really think about that. And I try to do that with every social media that I add to my ever expanding list of stuff to do, because you know, frankly, social media endeavors, community management endeavors, events, if they're going to be ongoing maintenance required efforts, I think you've got to take that into account before you really jump in. But I do mention that Clubhouse has a no barrier to entry situation, so you can hop in and then you're gone. You don't even need to dive in. So that's what made me even want to give it a shot, frankly. But what I've done is I've really started to think about why I think this is important. And you know, there's tangible wins for me personally. You know, I picked up 2 speaking engagements, and you know, I've had somebody reach out to me and give me a lot of feedback on, you know, a customer who probably wouldn't have felt like they were empowered to do that. And you know, I've also been able to, you know, I've made a few friends on it that are also SEOs and content strategists that I probably wouldn't have connected with. So I do see a lot of value there. And you know, I'm continuing to kind of keep tabs on this and just say, what's my, and after every session, just thinking about it, like, what's my takeaway? Why was this worth my time? You know? So.
You know what's really interesting? When I think about who is really best primed to take advantage of this platform, my answer would be content marketers. And I think because I've had a lot of people say, I say, you should be on this platform. And they say, what's the direct ROI? Are you going to say that I can get X number of new patients from this? If not, then I'm not doing it. Right. And so that's not a content first mindset. No. And so I think like if you are already about educating people through different forms of content, this is just another form of content called audio content in which you will continue that mission. But I think that to be successful, you have to understand what that mission is. And if you want to create a movement, understand what that movement is before you create a club, before you host rooms, before you really are active on there, so that people, look at why people are joining clubs or are tuning in for your show week after week. It's because they are aligning with the mission that you have set forth. And I will say this to your point, Jeff, that you're right, it is a lot of work. This isn't the same as saying I'm opening up a Twitter account and I'm going to tweet when I feel like it, once every 6 months, or, you know, who knows, once every day. You have to, if you really want to build a following here, you have to think of it like a podcast or a TV show that you are committing that every week we will be back at the same time, like what we're doing, we will be there 5 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday night from 5 to 6 in the content marketing, PR, and SEO group. Come ask your questions so people can plan their lives around that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think it's that direct accessibility to people you wouldn't probably have is still a very exciting thing, but it is one of those, it's garbage in, garbage out if you want outcomes, and you've got to put in the effort. But that also ties to another concept kind of from your perspective that I hadn't really thought through considerably, but as a PR, you know, a PR leader, as an agency owner, doesn't Clubhouse create a kind of a tough situation for maybe managing their accounts or acting on their behalf because you can't?
Yeah, because we can't. I can't, you know, hop on. So I could tell a client, make an account on here, and then unlike Facebook or LinkedIn, I can't ghost them. I have no access to their account. And then I cannot begin to tell you how many PRs like, oh no, my client's on the stage again. It's like 11 p.m. I need to hop on Clubhouse. And they're like so anxiety ridden about what's going to be said. You know, as PRs, like we naturally have so much anxiety and we craft messages around all of these things. But we at least get to do that, I think, behind closed doors before someone goes on stage. And it's a much more condensed timeline, right? If a client's going on air, maybe they're going on air for a 3-minute segment, not a 6-hour room on Clubhouse. So that's, there's certainly a whole new component of how do you manage that, and billable time, and what does that look like from an agency perspective? And, you know, also going back to the topic here, Clubhouse and disappearing audio content, your content strategy's future. Let's talk about that, like, you know, the ROI of that, and how you bill for that, and how you sort of say, this is something we need to shift resources to, because this is a conversation a lot of agencies will be having now over the next few months. And I'd love to hear your perspective when someone's saying, no, you have to move dollars towards us, the ROI of that.
Yeah, and I think that you're going to have kind of the, you know, the answers no one has right now are ones like they ask about their investment in social media. So actually, Farah, one of our guests today, and thank you for joining us, Farah, asks, have you yet figured out how to find out the best time to start a Clubhouse room or to time a Clubhouse room? And when I read that question, I was thinking to myself, I absolutely have no input on that. That is based in data. I have had a few experiences there, but it's a great question for me. And Kris, you probably have some.
At night, yeah. For me, I say at night. I know that. Listen, so it's almost like a totally different crowd of people that are on Clubhouse during the day versus at night. I wrote an article. It ran on Dennis Yu's site about this. And one of the things I said is that I made this rule of no Clubhouse time during billable hours, because I feel like those hours are bought by clients. And if I'm on Clubhouse, is that really fair? And I think what you're going to start to see a lot of people, I've already seen it in terms of posts of work productivity going down because of the level of distraction. And, you know, if you're on stage on Clubhouse and doing work for someone at the same time, and someone could call on you, like that's a lot, right? It's not passive, it becomes active. Yeah. And so for me, the rule is like after 5 o'clock.
So after hours in your target audience, or at least after hours for yourself, or, you know, accounting for who that audience is, I think is a great idea. But it's very similar to how one thinks about their social media planning and targeting. And, you know, I mean, there's applications out there that look at, you know, all of my hashtags, analyze them, all of my typical hashtags, look at my hashtags, look at my typical posts, and every day can give me a weighted average of the best time for me to tweet, right? And so I don't think that's going to exist for Clubhouse in some time. It's going to be anecdotal, but so far, my experience, and then Kris's experience. But that's a great question for her. But also, it makes it think about, like you said, Kris, about is this part of your content strategy's future? I guess my answer to that is it depends, right? It depends on what Clubhouse does. If they start archiving audio, if they start doing some, you know, some audio search, if they start building out ways, more accessible and, you know, feasible ways for you to do this in a way that isn't 100% repurposing, I think the path to that's quicker. But I think if you're going to invest time into it at all, you've got to consult with somebody who understands content strategy, content repurposing as a practice, and rich media optimization. It's not that you're taking the audio and transcribing it against the terms of policies. It's you've got to bring this to the other medium in order to have meaningful, you know, long-term impact.
That's what I always say about PR, Jeff. If you're on TV, it's not the TV hit that matters. It's putting it on social media, putting it on your website, building your brand with it. If you don't do that, it's just a flash in the pan, and no one may have ever seen it. I completely agree with that point.
Absolutely, and that's where I'm really thinking about, you know, ways to do that. But the best parallel I've given is there is a constant stream of effectively micro events, or, you know, it's kind of like how we kind of feel with virtual events right now. There's so many. Are they getting diluted? Well, no, I don't think so, because if you're willing to invest the time in transcreating those, and that's probably not the right word, but it might be, transcreating or morphing that event into something that is, you know, not evergreen, but it has some sort of more lasting impact, or you're marketing it from many places. So I think if you had many landing pages or many things promoting the Clubhouse, there's value there as well. I mean, it's very novel.
Yeah, so one thing that I did, because I run the 2 different clubs on there, is I bought the name of the URLs for each of those. So I'll create landing pages for both of them to somehow figure out some C to A with that, or call to action with that, sorry. But I wanted to ask you something else about what you just said about micro events, because I know we have a different perspective on this, and I think we should talk about that a little bit, because I don't see them as micro events. In fact, when I think about the best conversations I've been part of on there, they weren't under any events. They were the after party of the event.
Yeah.
Just like a real conference, right? Like, you know, like the best conversations, is it when you're listening to the keynote, or is it after, when you talk to 3 people about what you heard about the keynote? So for me, those are the parts, those are the micro moments that I love about it. It's not the actual main event.
I absolutely agree. And so I'm not disagreeing with that. I believe that they are both almost the same thing. Because one, if you feel that strongly, you can actually turn the second one into a micro event. And that's where I'm seeing this. Yeah, for me, absolutely. Going to shows, going to conferences, after the first few, it's all about the relationships. It's all about the after parties. It's all about the conversations you have in the hallways, or, you know, that type of experience, much more than, the excitement of being a speaker or listening to someone who you admire. I think that other part of it is very important. And I think that this really feels like that. Yeah.
That's why I'm excited for our Clubhouse room at 5 o'clock today, because that's our first time trying this, where it's an after party of a webinar, right? About Clubhouse.
Yeah, and Aki, my co-founder and MarketMuse president, is going to join us to just talk about any ideas that come up as a part of, that we've talked about today, or things that people agree with, things that people don't agree with. And I feel like there is this scenario where, gosh, if the room's very small, am I violating the people's trust if I turn that into my content strategy? Versus if the group was larger, am I not violating the people's trust? So that's also part of this for me. Like, gosh, I wouldn't want to be a person who was seen in other people's eyes as being like almost like the documentarian or the exploiter or the exploiter of my room, right? So there's just so many different dynamics that, it makes me not want to do anything and wait for other people to do it, because it's one of those scenarios like, gosh, what if somebody popped into your room and you're like, uh-oh, Larry's here, and I'm just saying the word Larry. Uh-oh, Larry's here. Whenever Larry's in a room, he blogs about it and tweets about it. And maybe I'm gonna clam down, or maybe I'm just gonna hop out and go like hang out with my family, which I should be doing anyway tonight. Like there's some things that could come from this that we can't predict. So I think that there's interesting ideas.
That's also the Clubhouse culture now, where when media enters the room, you'll hear the moderator say, just so you know, so-and-so has entered the room from the Washington Post, or so-and-so is now here from the New York Times. So if we're resetting the room to let everyone know that, and then some people will leave because they're uncomfortable with that, for sure.
Wow. Yes, so I mean, what is it? Is media going to ruin this for everyone? Are really strong content strategists going to ruin this for everybody?
Someone
is that
will.
going to make this more presence? I think the one thing we can say is that, the Clubhouse application developers are product managers of, what I would consider, this is what product-led growth is. It's building applications that have a wild virality component. It's novel. It provides unique, novel experiences that you haven't had in other places, and they're showing it. I mean, this is something that has the ability to create, 4 million new accounts in 2 weeks. I mean, that's pretty exciting. I mean, how do you view their future, or what do you think their moves are going to be, or do you think they're just going to let it play out for a while and see if the slope continues to become massively exponential? So
I think they have some challenge. I'm curious to see what they do in terms of content moderation or abuse that takes place on the platform, what that looks like and how they handle it. They talk, now you can report trolling, but again, what does that even mean? What is the definitional term of a troll? do you say something I don't like? You know, if we have a different, if I don't like that you said they're micro events, does that make you a troll? Can I kick you out for saying that just because I have a different opinion? I mean, that's why I get concerned, and it sort of lends itself back to the conversation about cancel culture on Clubhouse, which seems to be a big conversation all the time. So that concerns me a little bit. But one question I want to ask you from a sales perspective is that there seems to be a fine line and a balance of how do you promote yourself while also educating others. You know, so I did a room Saturday night, I told you, for 6 hours. And a few people said, you didn't mention what you do or who you are or even your company. Like, you're so like into moderating this room that actually like you still need to remember, like, you're doing the room and you have a right to be able to say those things. And I think a lot of people are struggling with that. And I know you're amazing at selling, so maybe you have some tips for like, how do you walk that line?
I think that, I mean, my personal perspective is that I feel value selling or consultative selling is very solutionless. And it isn't something where I would much rather never talk about myself or my product. I would much rather understand the, you know, the person who I'm speaking to or is part of the conversation, their challenges and how they make purchasing decisions, what their pain points are, what their view of a solution is, right? How they think they would solve this problem right now, to be able to truly tie back to real quantifiable value. And understanding that is the key to selling anything. If you don't understand, if you don't care about that person's, you know, everything about them and their outcomes, you're just slinging wares, right? And I think that with the what you just said, erring on the side of being a no pitcher is the best. I mean, those are the people that that get invited back to events on stage. I once had the showrunner for the Content Marketing Institute tell me the best thing about a speech by Jeff Coyle is that he doesn't mention MarketMuse. It's not because people don't want to hear about it. It's just, it's not that you don't need to. If you're doing it well, you don't need to. The understanding that Kris is a PR expert comes through. It comes through in the discussion. You know, at the tail end, you may, you know, want to drop a few things. Hey, if you didn't know this, this is what I do, this is how I do it. But if someone's truly going to make an investment like they would need to make in, you know, PR services, I would much rather have them, you know, do that. How likely is it that your call to action is going to be so exciting? And guess what? If you've got something truly valuable to offer, you know, and you want to talk about that, you know, an offer like one might put on the tail end slide of a webinar, right? 15% off one. Hey, use that time, right? And, you know, and from that perspective, as we kind of wrap our time up, I do think that is it's a consideration. It's a consideration that, you know, are you pitching first? Are you making sure everybody knows who everybody is and what they represent, the value it represents, and that's enough? Because it's going to really, really stink if every time someone, you know, brings up a hammer or brings up a nail, you're the hammer, you know. that's what I have heard. I have heard that on a few of my rooms that I've been in. So.
You make a great point, Jeff. And I think one of these upcoming events will have to do something around social selling and how to sell everything you just said, because that could be, I don't think most people know how to sell the way that you just referred to. But I want to bring up one other point here, which is how will Clubhouse, I guess to close it out, how will Clubhouse impact the speaking industry, right? So one concern that I have is, let's say you're a speaker and you make money from speaking. Are you devaluing yourself and your worth if you go on Clubhouse for 10 hours a day and speak, but then someone asks you to speak and you say, here's my rate? Are they then going to say, why would I pay you to speak if you're on Clubhouse 10 hours a day? I really think about this question, and I'm curious what you think about it.
You know, as someone who's spoken 200 plus times live, and you know, gosh, it seems like a dozen a week these days, and only been paid one time. I'm probably not very, and I didn't even realize I was being paid, and just happened to get an honorarium after the fact, and I don't remember who I donated it to, but I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't really understand that the mental energy of someone who gets paid to speak. I think that, yeah, I think that you have to really bring the value when you do get paid to speak then. But no, I mean, I think that you're building relationships. You're gaining more exposure. There are SEOs whose names I did not know a month ago, who I interact with and am so excited that I'm connected to them. And I don't know if I would have found them without Clubhouse. So yeah,
I will
think
say,
that's cool.
I do think though that being a little bit exclusive with your time on Clubhouse is important, right? So if people know, for example, that you are going to be available for 1 hour a week on Clubhouse and that's their time to get you, I think that's a little bit more alluring than knowing that you're available 10 hours a day, you know, and not working, right? So that's the other, that's what we're seeing with some people. If you look at their app usage, they're on there all day long. And like, does that become appealing, or is that kind of a turnoff in terms of the fact that now they're on there too much? Where do you draw that line?
Yeah, I agree. It depends on how much value they're bringing. I mean, if you knew somebody was on there that you know that was super valuable, and you know the value they bring. I mean, are you kind of turning them into your on-demand consultant? We were talking about, hey, do we have a Friday session where we're doing, you know, on-demand live audits? You know, and that would be really cool. Or would it? I don't know. Is that something that, you know, would get, you know, diluted over time? You know, I think it's a great concept. It's, you know, for me, I don't have a ton of time after hours, so I'm typically on there when I'm driving home. And you know, there's a couple of the common moderators. One of them was like, yeah, we caught Jeff. He must be on his drive home the other day. And I'm like, you know it, Noah. Yeah, so I was laughing. I'm like, yeah, you're kind of like timing this, and I'm happen to be driving home. Because frankly, I'm making a decision between listening to, you know, a podcast recording, listening to video, or sorry, listening to, you know, music, or if there's a cool Clubhouse. And I'm actually making that decision when I jump in the car now. And yeah, that's kind of interesting. And there's definitely something I did not expect to be a decision that I was making every time I hop in the car.
So Clubhouse is the new talk radio, is basically what the conclusion we've come to.
It is the one fun thing, and I was a good friend of mine, and we were on one the other day. It was like, sometimes I kind of just want to jump in and be a fly on the wall, and you know, the better you are at, you know, content marketing and being an authority, the more likely it is somebody's just going to throw you on stage. So that's something that I guess we'll have to deal with too. Is can you flag yourself as, hey, please don't pull me on stage?
That would be a good feature.
An interesting feature that they'll be considering, I'm sure.
Can I say one final thing that's important?
I have, yeah, please do.
One final thing that's important: a true subject matter expert knows what they are not an expert at. So I would leave people with that advice, that it's important to not speak about everything, even if you're asked or if you're brought up on stage, like Jeff said. Know when to pass the ball to someone else. And we talk about that in content marketing, but I think it's incredibly relevant on this platform when people are going to be throwing rapid fire questions at you. They're excited that they have an expert, but it is not up to them to understand the depth of your knowledge or subject matter expertise. That's up to you. And so I think when we talk about, you know, how do we fight misinformation in real time, one of the ways that we can do that is to say, thanks so much for this question. So-and-so over here on stage is actually better equipped to answer that one because it's not in my wheelhouse. And so obviously we tell people to do that on TV or for media training, but I think it's more important than ever to do that on Clubhouse too.
Be legitimate. I think this is yet another rise of good community managers. An important part of being a great community manager is to lift up your community. And if someone asks a question, and you've done the research of your regs or your regulars, and you point the question towards that person to shine a light on them, you look great too, because you're actually doing a service to the community. I mean, and you know, that was what I was talking about with the you know, the people who steal the air from the room. You know, it's so much of a better decision to shine the spotlight on others, and it reflects so well on you and your ability to be self-aware. And I think that that's something that I'm excited about it when I'm in a room and someone's doing that, because it just really feels great. I mean, and you know, it shows you've done your research of your regulars. You know, you research your regulars. There's my hot tip for the day. Research your regulars, because you know, when someone hops in, and you know, that's another saying from value selling is show them you know them. And the application I think to that on Clubhouse is research your regulars, because they're going to be the ones that keep the engine running. So, so tell us a little bit about RubyMediaGroup. So, I'm teeing you up. Tell us what you're focused on, the types of things that you do, and you know, what an ideal customer is.
Sure. So we do public relations, social media, content marketing. We really focus a lot on personal branding as well, and making our clients the go-to experts in their field, whether that's on TV, on podcasts, digital placements, which helps their SEO as well. So we have thought leaders in all different fields, ranging from marketing to medical to anything and everything in between. So I'm always happy to chat. People can reach me at kruby@rubymediagroup.com if you're looking to build your brand.
And I will just say, very awesome stuff. Really everything really comprehensive. I know you did a recent like long form post on public relations. Everybody should look for that. It's really great. And we did have one final comment from a listener, and we'll bring up some of the other questions that have been archived, but it said, you know, I would love to see a session on social selling. And this has been a wonderful conversation on a topic that most people aren't talking about. So, hey, Becky, thank you so much for that feedback live. I think that's a great way to close up shop, and I look forward to reconnecting with you in 3 hours for the after party. All right?
All right. Thank you so much, Jeff. See you at 5.
Hey, cheers, everybody. See you. Bye.